please stand and join in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the board clerk please call roll?
Director Arcata?
Here.
Director Johnson? Here. Director Maynor is absent. Director Mendoza?
Here.
President Loudon-Slaughter?
Here. Is there a motion for approval of our agenda?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion or comments from the board? Since there are no comments from any of the directors, is there any discussion or comments from the public? There are no public comments. We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call roll?
Director Arcata?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Yes.
Director Maynor is absent. Director Mendoza?
Yes.
President Loudon-Slaughter?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Public comment and association reports. Any person may address the district board on any subject pertaining to district business which is not listed on the agenda. This is provided by the Ralph M. Brown Open Meeting Act and may be limited to 3 minutes for any person addressing the board. Any request that requires board action may be set by the board for a future agenda or referred to staff. Does local 4981 have a presentation for us, comments?
Yeah, just a couple of things to verbally report out on. We donated to Dream Athletics, popular gymnastics club. They host a lot of birthday parties. If you have kids in that age range, it's pretty much where everybody goes. We are now considered a gold level sponsor, and we sponsored a team to make it to their national tournament out in Florida. So we're pretty excited about that. And in 2 weeks, the e-board, so Mr. Padula, Tony Freeman, and myself are going to be at a union leadership training down in Seaside around the same time. President Loudon-Slaughter and Chief Emmons will be down there.
Is there any member of the public that would like to make a comment at this time? Please.
Roy Willis, Association, Volunteer Firefighter Association, Firemen's Association. I apologize, I forgot to send my attachment in for the meeting minutes. So real quickly, I'll just present it to you. Actually, it was a pretty busy month, 91 hours volunteer time, the annexing effort that we helped out with, the surveys, a lot of trainings, an EMS refresher, and a couple of incidents. It was 91 hours. Something else I want to report is we're losing 5 VLU association members. Tom Dewey, Sean Campbell, Tanya Campbell, Angelica Garcia, and Dave Howe are all resigning from the VLU and the association. So as we talked to the chiefs a little bit about how the association might help start to recruit for the VLU, as we're down to I think 8, maybe 6, 7 active members. So we really need to make sure the VLU is substantial and has the support that we can come out when necessary to help out. CPR, this last month we actually gave CPR in Spanish. It's a big deal. Michelle Donahue, our new member, she just joined the VLU and the association. She's fluent in Spanish. She was a ASL teacher. So she actually presented a class in Spanish. So it really opens up the venues we might be able to go after to teach CPR and first aid. We have some money left over in the placard project, $1,700, and I've been talking, I guess we're getting some phone calls of people that are interested. We will tend to collect those however they come in. I've asked that to happen, and sometime in the next couple of months, if we get up to 15 or so, we'll spend that money and go out and order those and sell those placards. But we do not wish to advertise, so I just advertise. Berg Foundation grant for the slide-in pump. is where that's been submitted for the flatbed. And Central Coast grant for $25,000 to prevent, prevention pickup should be coming out soon. And we've got to re-roof our industry property.
The whole thing?
No, we're gonna just over the boat press,
Oh, sure.
but it's leaking. Thank you.
No other public comments. Consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered routine and are acted upon by the board with a single action. Members of the audience wishing to provide public input may request that the board remove an item from the consent calendar. Comments may be limited to 3 minutes.
President Loudenslager, I want to advise that Director Johnson was missing from the attendance of the March minutes in the consent calendar. So her name will be added prior to the approval of the consent calendar.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any board or public member that would like a specific item removed from the consent calendar? Seeing that there's none, I'll entertain a motion and a second to accept the consent calendar.
I'll make the motion that we accept the consent calendar.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Director Arcata,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Maynor is absent, Director Mendoza,
Yes.
President Loudenslager,
Yes.
motion carries.
District business. Item number 1, first reading of reinstatement of board member compensation. Would you please have a staff report?
Sure. We have, I think we've worked out all the kinks in the draft ordinance, so tonight would be if the board chooses to pursue staff or pursue the compensation for board members. Tonight's action would be to read the title of the ordinance in the form of a motion, and then direct staff to set the matter for a public hearing and final adoption at the May 14th regular board meeting.
Do we have any questions from board members?
I have just a couple, what I'll call corrections, I think maybe. Page 77. Section C. The second paragraph. Line 5. I think we need to take out the word will between district and reimbursement. If somebody can read that. So it would say, although if no district vehicle is available or the traveler is seeking special permission to use their private vehicle for travel, the district reimbursement for use of personal vehicles shall be. I don't think the word will fits in there.
Makes sense.
And then the second one, same page, 77, section D, line 4. I think we need to add the word in between the words is and the. So it says,
Is
if the
in.
district determines that it is in the best interest. That's all I have.
just as, for clarification, then with those two corrections, we just need to make the motion when you read the title of the proposed ordinance to include the two changes that were just discussed.
Is there any public comment? So I will then call for a motion.
I'll move to approve the attached district ordinance number 24-22 and set the matter for public hearing and final adoption at the May 14th, 2024 regular board meeting with the two corrections identified by Director.
What's that?
You need to read the ordinance out.
Yeah, can you, just for
Oh,
clarification, read the title of the,
an ordinance of the Arcata Fire Protection District reinstating the compensation for members of the Arcata Fire Protection District governing board pursuant to the Health and Safety Code 13857.
thank you.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
With a motion and a second, we call the roll.
Director Arcata,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Maynor is absent, Director Mendoza,
No?
President Loudenslager,
Yes.
motion carries.
Business item number 2, direct the budget committee to work with staff to develop the 2024-25 budget for presentation to the board. We have a staff report.
Well, the committee was already,
Don't look at me.
what do you,
It stopped recording for some reason. Just felt like it, I guess.
tell me when the action and all.
You can go ahead.
Okay.
I don't know
So,
why.
With the committee already established, what is missing is to direct staff on how to proceed, which is all per code. But the board should direct staff to work with the committee to produce the 24-25 preliminary budget and have it presented to the board at the June 24 board meeting. And the other part of the motion should be to direct the committee and staff to have the fiscal year 24-25 final budget presented no later than the September 24th board hearing, at which time that would be our public hearing process for it. And then again, for education-wise, the reason why we have our adoption so late is because we don't get our final numbers from the county until well into the budget year. So per the Health and Safety Code, they allow us a couple extra months.
Any questions or comments from directors? Any comments from the public? Seeing none?
Could I just say one thing?
Yes.
I'd like to thank President Loudenslager and Director Johnson for serving on this committee. We appreciate that very much.
With that, can we have a motion?
I'll move that we direct the committee to work with staff to produce fiscal year 2024-25 preliminary budget to be presented no later than June 2024 board meeting. And 2, direct the committee and staff to have a fiscal year 2024-25 final budget presented no later than September 2024 board meeting.
I'll second.
With a motion and a second, please call the roll.
Director Arcata,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Maynor is absent, Director Mendoza,
Yes.
President Loudenslager,
Yes.
motion carries.
District business item number 3, consider agreement for consulting services for the development of long-term finance planning with Calamuni Advisors and authorize the fire chief to sign the agreement. Can we have a staff report?
Sure. Calamuni Advisors is part of our financing team that we've been working with for purchasing fire engines and also the unfunded liability restructuring debt. The Calamuni Advisor is Andrew Flynn. I don't know if all of you know who Andrew Flynn is. He's in the finance business, and we've worked with him outside of acquiring loans for the fire district to assist with our long-term debt and how to deal with it. He was helpful and worked with us to develop our debt policy and our unfunded liability policies that the board adopted. So amongst talking with him a couple times a year on what we do with retained revenues and where to put them, whether we put them in our PERS account for our after retirement medical, or if it goes into, right now, the recommendation is to send that money down to Cal Trust, which is earning a higher rate of return for interest. Anyway, so we were talking, Chris and I, with Andrew in regards to a long-term financial plan, which is something that he can provide. And after discussing this topic with him, it made a lot of sense that we would do it kind of in tandem with the standards of cover. And what the standards of cover is going to tell us is we're woefully understaffed, and we have the potential for a lot of growth coming in our fire district. It'll be probably many more pages that explain all that. What's not really going to happen in there is how is the district going to finance all of this? And Andrew's study, or his report, will take into, as he and I were just talking today about it, the big three: staffing, fire stations, and equipment. And if you don't have any of one of those, you're not going to be able to run calls and go put fires out. And he will take a comprehensive review of our status and our borrowing power and how we can potentially leverage funds to get other funds and come up with a long-term financial financing plan. So he and I were chatting today about how it does tie into the standards of cover. He could take some of the information, but knowing what the growth is, knowing what we're looking at, you know, he's triggering, he and I were talking about a population increase. If you get to a certain threshold, you need to add 3 more firefighters or 6 more firefighters or another station or that kind of thing. So that's where I think his plan, and it will be usable so that you can take some of those inputs and adjust them, population growth or interest rates or things like that. In talking with him and discussing with Chris, I think this is going to be a critical component that the board's going to need to have in their back pocket when we go back out for renew of the funding measures. That here's the study that says we need this many people, here's the study or the report that says here's how much we're going to need, and we're going to have to finance this or increase taxes by this or arm wrestle the county for more, you know, ad valorem or the city money. You know, another call. This evening. We'll push pause for a minute. Commercial break.
Okay.
I'll reset here in a second. Anyway, so Andrew's proposal would be to kind of bridge the gap of what the standards of cover is going to show that we need with that financial analysis, and not necessarily how we're going to get there, but at least to give us an idea on, you know, if the round number is we need $6 million, how is the district going to be able to finance that through the next several years? And ultimately, I think it'll fit into Eric's, your need for a comprehensive capital improvement plan. You know, it's going to take into account that we're going to need to replace engines, and you know, as we get bigger engines, the matter of station has got to have something done to it to accommodate the new pairs. So really, it's a big ask. It's, I think it was, what did you say, 80 hours? It's just a little shy of $25,000. But in the grand scheme of things, it should give you, as a board, a better forecasting for what we need for financing.
Any questions from board members?
I have a question. So, when is the new tax, that is when is the new, when do we have to go out and refresh Measure F?
Before 2030.
So will this be, I mean, is this gonna still be valid in 2029 when we're looking at that?
I think your inputs will change, you know, obviously staffing costs and whatnot, but how Andrew does his things, he builds the spreadsheets and you can change the inputs and it will forecast all that stuff out. So I think that it should be like our SOC, 5 years is about what you're gonna be looking at for validity in this study in the SOC.
Because that's one of the things that's concerned me, probably. You know, one of my top concerns here is there's so many unknowns, big ticket items that we can't plan for. You know, an apparatus costs 900,000, you know, and then PERS has a bad year and they, you know, suddenly we owe another $500,000 and then the, you know, the medical insurance system is a mess. And I'm just wondering, is he gonna help us find some new revenue sources for special districts? Because it seems like we're pretty much painted into the corner for property taxes. So he'll have the data, so how will that help us plan for things that we know pretty much right now we can't afford?
Well, just that, but you'll be able to have a price tag on where we're going with it. And so, I mean, really, you have financing and a special tax and a benefit assessment at this point in the game. Whether the state changes how they fund special districts, or we can arm wrestle the county for funding through some of their revenue sources. I don't know, he's not gonna provide that information as far as where to find additional money. But there are, when we were looking back to do the tax, there was what's the company I sent you, SCI? Mm-hmm. SCI was a California firm that specializes in benefit assessments to get those type of revenue streams established for special districts. But personally, I think, yeah, you're right, Randy, that we don't know what the future holds, and we know that we're gonna need a station remodel, and we're gonna need continuing to be purchasing fire apparatus. And we just don't have the total picture on the cost and how we can take our current set of district finances and leverage it to potentially, you know, make it work for us through some other partnerships.
Would he research things such as like enterprise funds that, you know, I mean, it seems like if we can't do any more taxation, you know, could we, for instance, I'm just brainstorming, I'm not proposing anything, that we go into the dispatch business and we charge the rest of the county, you know, and we run a dispatch center and we charge the rest of the county, and then we have an enterprise fund where we can make, you know, pay for something, you know, where we could offset some expenses, or, I mean, all theoretical, but would he research some of those strategies? Does that include that?
I'm not totally certain, but that, you know, specifics, if we had something for him to throw into the pot that we were interested in, that could be included. Like I told him, you know, we were going through the standards of cover, which he was happy about that because we'll be able to pull the staffing needs out there. But if there is something, you know, in that realm, then yeah, we would have to add that to the information when we give it to him to do the comprehensive study.
Is that something that concerns me since I've been here, is that we're paying, was it 300,000 a year for CAL FIRE to dispatch, and, I mean, that's just, is it 300 a year?
New.
More?
450.
450,000 a year now for CAL FIRE to dispatch, which we all heard how they dispatch, and didn't seem too helpful when they're dispatching a CAL FIRE unit. But, you know, it seems like that could be something that, that would be nice for him to see if there are special districts that can do something like that. It's been JPA's been tried in the past, didn't work, but you know, if we, like, Measure Z is going away, folks. You know, the writing's on the wall. The Board of Supervisors, if they don't do it this year, one of these years, the Measure Z contribution towards dispatch, I bet you, I'm just predicting is gonna go away as an example. So are those some of the things that we can plug into this research and have a really broad, at least a punch list of potential problems and that we know that are coming?
Well, I think that's what we need to identify is what are the big ticket costs, and I mean, we kind of have an idea, but what's it look like for financing and, you know, to add more money, more revenue, you know, that's probably gonna fall more onto the AP Triton folks, that have kind of dubbed our SOC a master plan. And that's probably more of what they're gonna be, looking at is, they're taking into account our auto aid providers and, you know, what's coming to help us, and they may have some of those recommendations in the SOC.
Well, and while you're on that, I mean, how long can some of our auto aid providers, like, you know, the little small volunteer departments, help us with a 7-story residence hall fire, or even a 4-story apartment? I mean, are they relying on them? And I just wonder how long we'll be able to rely on them, even if they will do it. That's another concern down the road that.
You know, it's not down the road, it's immediate. I mean, the volunteer response, it's hit and miss. That's why our auto aid agreement has blossomed into 3 additional agencies to come assist us, just so that we can make sure that we at least get 1 or 2. And then, yeah, I've had this conversation, heart-to-heart conversations with other neighboring fire chiefs about if our buildings go up, you know, that's a huge impact, not just on our fire services, it's everybody's fire services. And we don't have the training, don't have the facilities. I mean, we've heard all of this before, but, you know, we have to, I think that these plans are, both the SOC and the long-term financing plan is a must to figure out where we need to go. And, you know, it's unfortunately, it's gonna be back to the community to chip in and pay for it.
But that's the problem, and I'm sorry for taking up so much time, but it just needs to be discussed. That this is the elephant in the room that I think needs to be discussed. You know, we have a city within the city of Arcata that's not paying hardly anything, essentially. They're taking property off, and that would be Cal Poly Humboldt. For the record, they're not. I mean, I'm supportive of Cal Poly Humboldt. I think it's wonderful to have a university in the town, but in our town, I mean, I personally would always want to live in a university town. But the fact is, they're really putting us in a tough spot here with their build-up. You know, pumping $500 million, $500 million into this little town of 18,000, and we don't have the infrastructure, at least for the fire rescue services. And so what do I worry about that? And I just feel like, how can this? So my question is, coming back, is this guy going to be able to help us with some strategies going forward to deal with some of these,
I think your strategies are, when you guys go off to special districts meetings and the fire district meetings, the only way to change it is to make Sacramento deal with it. We are hamstrung with our revenue, that's it.
Well, you know, we
Special
tried-
tax and benefit assessment.
we tried that. It didn't go too well.
Well, but I think that there's 26 other campuses in the state of California, and there are several still campuses that are impacting, whether they're fire districts like, I guess Rancho Adobe has been kind of merged into Petaluma, but there are some other areas that could help the fight, but, you know, I think that's the, if we're looking at Humboldt being the cause of our inadequate, staffing and deployment, then the chancellor's office or Sacramento is the place to do it. A study to look for more fees, I mean, you're still taxing or feeing or whatever, the same 36,000 individuals that live within our fire district.
Well, that's what I worry about, is that we are here to represent those 36,000 people, and how already, I think, I mean, just our property taxes, I think, are almost 400 a year, and we're just a single residence, and, you know, I don't know that, and then when you see all the buildup to the south, are your constituents gonna?
Still trying to process your $400 a year taxes. What?
Well, I don't know, it's $300 to $400, something like, I mean, I don't have the number on, it's all the additions onto the.
Oh, we're talking about the additions,
I mean,
not the
the
actual
additions, not the
property.
taxes, it's the
Okay.
additions to the tax bill.
Maybe a little heart palpitation
Well, you know, that, everything below the fold on your tax bill, again, it goes back to the state of California has, you know, a love-hate relationship with special districts. The reason why special districts are out there is because the state says we're not gonna provide those services, and the county says we're not gonna provide those services. Special districts have to be formed, and the only mechanism that non-enterprise districts have is to apply the tax. And until the Sacramento figures out that they need to put more money back into, in my opinion, the public safety sector, we're gonna be, you know, we're not gonna get anywhere, because you're just still squeezing blood from a turnip. I think next year, is it next year that the special district, response fund is coming online through OAS, or is it 26?
I think it's next year.
So there is undisclosed amount of money that's been set aside for special, fire districts. It's gonna be administered through CAL FIRE. A portion of the money is gonna get siphoned off to go, make CAL FIRE a better place. And then the rest of it's gonna be divvied up amongst the pre-Prop 13 districts, which is us, and the post-Prop 13 districts. That's everybody that was formed after, Proposition 13. You think we have it hard, the post-Prop 13 fire districts are even worse because they don't get any of the ad valorem funding. I think Neelan, is in that boat. They were formed, after. So all they get is their special tax. So again, back to, this is gonna tell us, what we, you know, what we currently have to what we need to make it work. The only way to affect change is to make it happen at the Sacramento level.
Okay, I'll say one more thing, then I'll be quiet, let someone else talk, and I apologize for the length here. I will support this, but I would hope that we could really, this shouldn't just be something we bring up once a year, this should be something we bring up on a regular basis, because it's something that the community needs to know, and, you know, that the community deserves to know, and I don't wanna be out, you know, being a chicken little, the sky's falling, but these are really big problems that we really have to have a responsibility, I think, to get out and make sure that the community knows, that our partner agencies know, and that, and that we were working on it. So, I mean, make perhaps a strategic planning event sometime, but if we don't know how to go about that, perhaps a strategic planning session might help, or staff could come up with a program on how we could really keep this word out, you know, my words in the news, you know, and anyway, I just, I think a big part of the problem is, as it was when we were doing Measure F, is folks, citizens understanding what the problem is, instead of assuming they know, because there's a lot of inaccurate, incomplete information out there. And with that, I will be quiet. Stop. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from other board members?
I have some. Did you see a copy of what he's planning on providing us for $25,000?
We had, yeah, there was a demo of again, like I said, it was a spreadsheet that we were on a Zoom with him that had you can fiddle with the inputs, and it will run through the spreadsheet and put out the outputs, and then the benefit to that is that he will have the interpretation of.
Okay, so it will require someone to interpret it.
Yes.
So how long is it good for?
How long is he good for?
No, not how long is he good for. If you're constantly gonna be inputting things and updating it, but we need someone to translate it for us, how does that work?
Good question. I would have to find out from him. I think that, I mean, most of his stuff, I just reviewed his chart today that is being attached to the RFP for the fire engine loan. A lot of that stuff, you know, it's making sense, just based on it's our numbers, it's our information. So I can't imagine that when we're talking financing fire engines, fire stations, and people, that it's gonna be too difficult to extrapolate that information back out. You know?
I mean, the major benefit would be to calculate a number for us, so that if we do have to go back for a special tax, or we do have to identify a number to increase the benefit assessment, that would be a solid number that has financial backing, instead of, you know, oh, well, we just kind of came up with it ourselves. I'm not super pumped on the price tag, if it's not something that we can use for more than 5 years. So is it gonna have a lifetime, like, will we always own this spreadsheet? Can someone continue to use it as it goes through, or is it something that's not necessarily going to be usable in the course, in the future?
Everything that I've received from him through our loan processes and the spreadsheets, I've been able to repurpose and continue to use. So I don't see any reason why. I mean, it's all Excel based. That.
Yeah, I think the price is a little bit more, I don't know, it's easier to understand it and maybe get comfortable with it if it's like, you know, this is the upfront cost, but we'll get a solid 5 years out of it, you know, so then it's only roughly like $5,000 a year that we're spending on this financial tool that's gonna help us do all these things, versus we're spending $25,000 and then in 2 years, we're gonna have to spend another 25. And that kind of spending for this financial forecasting seems really high to me. But again, I wasn't part of the initial conversation, nor did I see the demo, so.
No, this is just Andrew. So I think it's safe to say that, let me reach out to him. I mean.
Yeah, I like the idea, and I
So
think it probably
tool
would be
versus report. We're
super
looking for
beneficial,
a tool that we can have for
something
$25,000.
with some more
not a piece of paper.
longevity, yeah, I mean, yeah.
And then
So
to
this is gonna
Randy's
take him
point,
80 hours to put it together, that's, you know, that's not a ton of time for that
well,
price tag.
the one that he was showing us, I forget where the district is, but it's a district going through a consolidation, and they're doing this, they're trying to merge in and sequence, putting together purchases and staffing, and, so I'll see if I can get not necessarily a demo, but a kind of a overview of what that is, and,
Yeah,
get
I
a
mean,
frame.
like,
But to
Yes, the
answer,
only thing I'm thinking of is, all the charts and graphs and things that he presented for us when we did the,
the UAL.
when we did the liability refinance, and while all of that is wonderful, I just wanna make sure that it's something that it's not like just a one-time thing where he's gonna run all these figures, and then it'll be like, okay, well, you guys need to do this, and then if something changes, so like my concern with Cal Poly is that what if they don't grow? Like what if people just don't come here? And then what do we do? I mean, great, cause then we don't have to go through all this like stress financing and raising money and taxes and all that stuff, but also it does leave us in a weird kind of situation as well. And so, while I love that we're preparing for growth and, kind of leaning in that way, there is also a possibility that they're not gonna grow like they're forecasting, cause their numbers aren't that great. So, and with the current younger populations feeling a little gypped with colleges and student loans and things, I don't.
We're back. Sorry, Nicole.
Yeah, so to recap,
growth and not so growth.
yes, and so I know I've made this comment before, but forecasting, in finance, we like to say it's an art, not a science. And so that's just my concern, is that I don't want us to get into something that's forecasting such a long-term thing that might not technically be usable, because there are so many things that can happen that we can't adjust for. So being able to make quick adjustments to it and be able to understand and analyze that data with ourselves and not needing to pay for someone to do it would be better.
Okay, so I think that goes back to Randy's point of how long is this usefulness?
That's what I was trying to say, but Nicole said it much better.
She's in the money business. Okay, so I can do that. Tool versus report, the time of useful life, and then taking into account if we can manipulate it as it's going down the road to inputs and.
I mean, given what they've done in the past, I feel pretty good that it will be those things, but if we're agreeing at that price,
Chris will do
I'd
just
like,
fine.
I'd like to know that that's the case.
Sure.
That's actually what they told us at FDAC, is to build that team.
Should we
Yep.
table it for another meeting?
I think so, but I have a question too. So are they gonna estimate, revenue as well?
He's been, his current estimations for revenue expenses, at least for the loans, are 2%, but I would hope that we can fine tune it a little bit more than that, because that's just like the norm. I mean, look at fuel prices, I mean, jeez, we're off the chart, so,
Right, I guess what I was thinking is he going to be able to, or as part of this, look at if the community grows, we're gonna, some range. I realize we're not gonna get a fixed number, but we should be able to anticipate some range of revenues for different population projections.
Yeah, he'll probably have to spend time analyzing the historical data in order to get a stronger understanding of the potential growth that we've had within our revenues, and just also what our revenue generators are. The 2% is a pretty, that's a basic assumption.
Right.
So in order to get more detailed than that, you would have to spend time with the actual.
and I've
data.
already got that information since we've had QuickBooks and Excel, our decades worth of revenue growth in the individual, whether it's ad valorem, special tax, and the benefit assessment gets a little wonky because, we went haywire in 2020 and asked for a bunch of money, so that skewed the growth factor of it, but all of that information, I would hope that he takes into account so that we can get something that's a little bit more reliable than just the standard 2% growth. Because I don't think that, short term, we can do that. For a loan, I think that's applicable, but for this little bit more in depth, I would hope that we can get some better numbers.
Okay. I see this as being part of our contribution, as a district contribution to what should have been regional planning before they started all this. And we could either be difficult and stick our heels in the ground and say everybody else has to pay for all this and we're not doing any of it. And you guys should have done it all ahead of time, which they should have. Or we can do everything that we can afford and is reasonable, like SOC and like this, to contribute toward regional planning. And, you know, my own personal belief as a director and looking out for our constituents, the new buildings ultimately are gonna have to pay for, through benefit assessment type increases, pay for the additional staffing that they're gonna require. But we need to know what kind of ad valorem taxes we're gonna get from those, so we really know what that gap in funding is when we develop requests. And as well, going to the state, I mean, I agree with Randy completely that documents like the SOC and like this are gonna be critical, in my view, to educate city council, our county commissioners, and the general public in, you know, what the anticipated growth means for the infrastructure and staffing for public safety. And the money may have to come from Sacramento, but when we had our meeting January 25th, 2023, that Senator McGuire was on, he said he needed numbers for anything from Sacramento. So I don't know how we stand and where he stands in any money coming from Sacramento, but we will have done our part, and they won't be able to point fingers at the district and you know, say that we've been difficult and uncommunicative and haven't provided them with all the information they needed. And when we've talked with entities like the city, they've thought that the new buildings would pay for everything. And there's some of us here that are highly skeptical of that. There's some here that are highly skeptical that Cal Poly is gonna grow. And I, you know, in the discipline that I came out of, we looked for resilience and robust solutions. And, you know, our robust solutions would be ones that would accommodate both the higher growth and lower growth. You know, what solutions for staffing and building heights and mass. And the school's already building, so that is going forward. But in other venues, it's, you know, what sort of housing and community build out is robust to both big growth and little growth and infrastructure needs for an entity like the fire district. So Randy asked me a question. I'm not exactly certain how to proceed, but he was wondering, and I concur, whether we should table this for a month and get the questions back and bring it back.
Absolutely. I don't know, I mean, given the timeline that the standards of cover is gonna take, and this is not something that needs to happen tonight. It's not you're gonna lose your discounted price. It was just, we've been, this was the first opportunity that we didn't have a huge board meeting to have this as a topic of discussion. So I can totally take back the questions, and even if we need to arrange a conference call at the next board meeting with Andrew to chime in and be able to entertain more on the fly questions. But I don't think there's any action, other than public comment. I don't think there's any action that needs to be made off of this.
Is there any public comments?
I mean, I think going forward, this is gonna be a very helpful tool to predict and have a better estimate of how we want to approach the public for more tax dollars and potentially look at different avenues. But yeah, until the questions get answered, it seems appropriate.
Okay, moving on to district business item number 4, Arcata General Plan and Gateway Area Plan Draft Environmental Impact Report. I see there is a staff report.
It's your staff report.
So, you want me to take it over?
Yes.
I will take and run with it. So, when the draft EIR came up at the February meeting, and most directors didn't want to follow up on it, and I raised my hand and said I thought we should. And I have written a letter. I don't know if everyone has read it. Basically, and this isn't new. We actually had this in the presentation to the planning committee. You know, in our concluding slides, said, you know, don't build and occupy above 40 feet until we have a staffing or plan. I mean, you know, whether we have to have the money, whether we have the stations built and training tower built, you know, I think those sorts of things can be worked out. But we put it in there, don't approve and occupy buildings until we have this worked out. And what the long and the short of this letter says, the city is entirely within their jurisdiction and their responsibilities to set zoning, and they can set the zoning however they want. We're asking them to include in their policies that they will not, you know, have final construction and occupancy of these buildings above 40 feet until we have resolution of this public safety concerns with the fire district. Are there any other board members that?
I think it's a good communication. I might suggest directing it to the mayor so that it goes to a specific person and you to expect a specific response back. I mean, it should be to the city council also, but if it's directed directly to the mayor, then the mayor will know that they should, that we expect a, you know, we're hoping for a response. If you send it to everybody, it could just kind of.
Okay.
So from the president of the board to the mayor of the council makes sense of elected to elected.
I thought it was well written, well thought out.
Yes.
It conveyed our concerns very well. I'm in support of it.
There have, because I wrote something while I was out skiing, and they edited it. No, it wasn't bad. I probably could have flown, but they like.
It was a collaborative effort.
And I'm giving them due credit for editing their president.
I think the issue is silence implies consent. And even though we may have consent that, you know, it's okay, do your zoning, do your plan, we're not gonna remain silent. And I just go back to the sections that I had Alyssa and Ed put in from fire prevention, access, water supply. And the big one that we're starting to see now is there's a push to limit egress out of buildings and eliminate 2 stairwells in the form of just one giant stairwell in the middle of the building. And the fire service is coming out obviously against it, but in the developer designer, even at our city council, they're asking questions about doing that because it makes for more building space and cross ventilation and all these added features that are great, but when the lone stairwell is compromised and you can't get people out, and there's only 6 of us standing there at the bottom going, this is bad. So we stand by with the limited staffing, we absolutely have to have access access, water supply, and means of egress for people.
I just want to add one thing, just to, full disclosure, the city's my former employer, so, but I do feel there is a differentiation between the two big projects in the community, one being the high-rise dormitories, which are being built now, and the city's process, and that's a closed public process. And then the city's process has been very open, and they have allowed our fire district to, you know, to address them, and, you know, we've talked to planning commissioners and council members and so forth. And the city's process is slower too, so there's less, for me, there's less urgency with the city's process as there is with the state's process. And I just think that we tend to kind of put them together because we've talked about both tonight, and I just want to differentiate that. Personally, have less, my concerns are at a lower level with the city's projects than they are with the state's projects, for those reasons.
Agreed.
Any public comment? If all the other directors have had. Okay, so the final item with regard to this is whether we just send it to the city or whether we do a press release and have it be an open public letter that goes to the Time Standard and Mad River Union and Lost Coast Outpost, and how the board feels about that.
Well, if staff could get their staff to agree to put it in the council packet, I think that would be a good first start. I mean, I think if you mail it out to all the news organizations, that they might feel a little, perhaps we might need to do that if there's no response, but I think it's starting out at the lowest level.
Okay.
I think it would be good to get a commitment from the city staff that they would put that in the council packet, and then of course the news media would see it at the same time as everybody else, and it could be discussed. But, it is kind of a,
Right.
you know, a little heavy-handed by throwing it out there like that.
Well, that's why we're bringing it up.
Yeah.
And for me, it falls into the same category as you just brought up with our other financial analysis, that we need to communicate these things to our constituents. Our constituents need to be aware of it, and they certainly were a year ago. We were on, you know, forefront of things, and if we fall behind and it's not mentioned and EIR comes out, and but I think waiting a month or so for a response is no problem. I certainly would prefer to send it to them and have them read it and talk about it than them read it in the newspaper for the first time.
So if we send it to the mayor, and then we can send a copy of it to the city clerk to be included in the city council packet, and I guess it would be under the communications from our board to their.
Well, there's another step, is to ask to be put on the agenda, and then have the chief and the president go and do a presentation and include the letter. That would also be appropriate. It just has to be, to have an agenda item, although it would take longer to get on the agenda because they have a huge agenda and there's a little bit of a backlog, but that's one thing to consider, because then they're hearing it and reading it from our sources directly.
Looking for direction then. We can.
Well, we might check to see, I mean, if the board is interested in that, then I would say, check with the city manager and see when it could be put on the agenda, and if they would be willing to do that, it could be, well, no, the answer, or it could be they don't have room on the agenda for, for several months, or it could be, you could be there till midnight waiting to have your agenda item come up too, so.
Just from your experience, if we included on a public, communications, like we get correspondence and communication, it would be included, at least in their council pack, that we would have it presented, whether we're there to give a formal presentation, if it would be included in their, what do they meet, every other week pack?
Well, okay, here's another thought, is to include a line in the letter that we would like to, we would ask to be given an agenda. Send a letter to the mayor and the council, and then ask to be put on the agenda for a future time, so that fire district personnel can discuss it with the council further. So, and then it would probably be, when people kind of forget about the letter, there'd be just enough time to bring it up again, and it'd probably, I'm guessing, 2 or 3 months, but a good time for that would be in the fall, when all the, it just seems like things slow down during the summer. Just a thought.
Actually, the fall would be a good time. And we had one city council member who wants us to come and present to the city council. And I've not been excited about doing that, only because we prepared a rather in-depth presentation that we gave to the planning commission that they were intrigued with, but didn't really take any action on it. And my own view is to wait to make it, either for us to make a presentation to city council, but actually my preferred thought would be to have a joint meeting with them, and then the presentation about the SOC. And then we'd have both the city council and the fire board sitting in the same room at different tables, and a presentation, and then we could have a dialogue about it. Because everything, we presented a lot to the planning commission, and everything about staffing and requirements, I think that stuff, all of that information could be presented to them right now. Whether it would make any difference to their thought process, I don't know. But all the financials that I developed, all of that's gonna come out of the SOC and other documents. So rather than present that to them 30 days before the SOC comes out, because what we did, part of the presentation I gave to the planning commission was everything we said here is what we believe, but there's a formal process called an SOC that can go through and do all this, so you don't really have to believe us. We can get an independent authority in here to verify or make more recommendations or less severe ones. But I would like us to have the results from the SOC when we meet with the city council.
Well, and that's part of the presentation at the SOC would be a joint meeting between the district and the city, to have that presentation, and that would be a perfect opportunity to hit these points again.
Right.
Ideally, that'll be in the fall anyway.
Yeah.
It will take a long time to plan, because each council member has a lot of meetings and committees and JPA memberships that they're doing. It is really hard to get all of them together outside of the regular, and they also meet twice a month for their regular meeting. So it's pretty much like a full-time or half-time to 3/4 time job for a lot of them. So it would probably take that long to get it into their schedule, and be prepared for them to push it aside if, the things come up too, so. Or to reschedule. I think that's a great idea, to do that, especially for the SOC, because the city's paying for it. The city's going through a change. I don't know when the city manager is actually leaving yet, or if she has a date yet, but keeping that in mind, should be a factor too. How that would be, how a new city manager would embrace this is kind of unknown.
Yeah, that's true. Somebody coming in behind Karen, we don't know yet.
So for this, do you want me to make the editorial changes, or do you want, can staff take care of that? I mean, it's to put send it to the mayor, and.
We can send it to the mayor, and I still think that we need to send it to the city clerk to be included to the council as a communication from our board to their,
Okay.
to their board. And then we'll take the opportunity, this guy next to me will take the opportunity, when the SOC comes out to, you know, that, I think that's our way into, you're gonna have an audience, and whether it's us, you know, at one of their regular meetings to hear the presentation by AP Triton, or not, but I think that's the opportunity that we get on, again, still, sending the same message that we've been sending now for, what, 2 years?
Closing in on 2 years.
Yeah. So if you're available tomorrow to sign the letter, we'll have it.
I have jury duty tomorrow.
Oh, that's right.
I have to show up there tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Did you call?
Yeah,
Are they still only half days?
I'm,
Are they? If you do get it done, swing in and we'll have it ready.
okay,
If not, we know where you live, we can drop by.
okay. Moving on, correspondence and communications. There's no public correspondence, committee reports. We have a fire station.
Director Maynor and I met before he left for his vacation. I have been continuing to gather information that we will be meeting after he gets back. Currently, we do not have an update other than that. We are collecting our information.
And the budget committee has got their assignment. We've not met since the presentation of the last budget. We presented that, and we'll follow up and work with the incoming chief on the 24-25 budget. Fire chief's monthly report.
Okay, looking back, March, we had one notable incident. That was the abandoned house across the street from the Ocean West Mobile Home Park. Complete loss. And when they got done with overhaul, and it was even more complete loss. Overall, we had 301 incidents, and as you can see on the chart, about 48% of them were in the city limits, 35% up in McKinleyville, and the rest sprinkled throughout. The pre-incident value of a little over $10 million and a loss of 324. I'm trying to think of our pre-incident value, why it was up so high. I think we had an incident at a
Bayside Court.
Was it Bayside Court?
Bayside.
Yeah, okay. We had a few fires that turned out to be nothing, if anything. One was a burnt bagel on a stove, but it was a fire.
That's the one.
We have a lot of value, and then not much in the way of loss. 3 incidents for mutual aid given, 3 incidents received. 29.5% of our calls overlap, and our average response time for last month was 3 minutes and 52 seconds. Station signs, Captain Johnson is taking on the station sign. He's working through Sharp Auto Graphics. They're essentially gonna use all of the stuff that we have for the engine and put together a decal that we can then screw over the McKinleyville sign. and he's, as a contractor, he's going to build a sign for Mad River. We're looking at putting it further out into the yard so people can see it. And we're still trying to figure out what's the best place at this station, whether it's on the building or in a planter, and which side of the station would be the best thing for it. LAFCO, we had our LAFCO hearing. Jason was there. We had one person that spoke against not being included in the Arcata annexation. Robert Goodman didn't want to go with Nealon. He wants to come with us, which was honestly a first that somebody wanted to be annexed. There was a letter or two that LAFCO received that expressed their opposition to it, so we have to have a protest hearing. The hearing's going to be scheduled for May 2nd. I've got the Six Rivers Masonic Lodge as a neutral territory. I talked to Colette about holding it here at the fire station, and we figured that might be a little too intimidating for somebody that wants to come and speak against it. So LAFCO will be holding their protest hearing. I would invite at least Jason to, since it's your representation down there, and Eric, if you're in town on the 2nd, and they want to have it at 5:30 in the evening so they can catch folks after work. Odds are it's going to be probably nobody, but we have to do it. And then if there's nothing on the protest, then it'll proceed. And then kind of to backtrack in your consent calendar, the agreement, the tax revenue sharing agreement that was approved, the Board of Supervisors is going to be next month, I think, approving their part of it as well. So it's moving ahead. The engine purchase, we made the payment to Golden State Fire Apparatus, so we took the money from our reserve account at Cal Trust, paid Golden State, and Lease-Law, Cal Muni are in the process. The RFP for the loan should go out tomorrow, and we'll have it completed by the end of the month. The last thing I have on here is we had our 2023 annual awards. Just to highlight, we did our swearing in of new employees and recently promoted employees. Years of service were handed out. Several employees received service ribbons for either training or completion of programs. We had our activity awards. Those are Dave and Rob were our top responders for volunteers. Tony and Jay Sean and John Evenson are top hours worked. And just to highlight, Tony had the most at 125 shifts, and John and Jay Sean pretty much tied at 115 shifts for the year. And then our top career response, again, Tony, Wes, and Russell. And finally, our end of the year, or the of the year awards, Arlie Allen took our rookie of the year, even though she's not quite a rookie, she's new to us again. Volunteer of the year went to Tom Dewey, who, as Roy said, is going to be stepping down, and I think he'll still be affiliated with County Emergency Planning, but he's trying to slow down in retirement. So he's stepping down in June. And then our employee of the year went to Russell Cadle. Russell's been a team player for us in more ways than one. I don't know if you know it or not, Russell's been our relief position. So even though he's loosely assigned to B shift, he works as 8 shifts to 10 shifts any given month, and he's covering the holes where we need before we have to start plugging in overtime. And on top of that, he's become company officer qualified, so he can ride in the driver's seat, the captain's seat, and he's been pretty pivotal to our outfitting of the new engine, and specifically post-deployment hose loads. And finally, our officer of the year went to Tony Freeman. And along the same lines, Tony's been right there well, as you can tell, hours worked. I reminded him that he did work more hours than the normal straight time without taking time off, so he's in the the plus side of it. But that just goes to show Tony's been, whether it's covering a station or backfilling behind one of us as a active duty officer, he's taken on a leadership role within the union, and one of our training captains to boot. So he's a great guy, somebody that, when you say, you know, who's a fire officer look like? Well, Tony Freeman. Not to mention he was voted the Humboldt's best firefighter. He's the deer whisperer.
Poor Tyler.
Yeah. So as far as that, we had 164 hours of training. We're ramping up. I think I just saw at the Wildland Refresher Training, our annual refreshers coming out. At the time this report was written, we had everything working, and then things promptly broke. So we have an engine back out of service again, waiting on parts from Ferrara. Mad River Station, I forgot to put on there, we had an issue with our gas tank on the fuel dispensing side. We think there's a crack in it. It started taking on water, and we didn't figure it out until Ross filled up his pickup truck with 20
gallons of water.
20 gallons of gas. We're trying to save money, we're using water to do gas. Needless to say, Ross came back and said, hey, the truck's running rough, it's really shaky. I'm like, the old red truck went fine, and then it didn't go fine, and he took it down to Central Avenue, and they're like, yeah, you got water in your fuel tank. So we purged that. The bigger issue is we just filled up the tank, so we got a bunch of fuel in there. It's contaminated. We're working on trying to get it out. If we can filter it out so we can reuse the gas. And more importantly, Brandon's working on if we have a failure of the inner lining and what we need to do. So
No insurance for that sort of thing?
nope, it's called contingency fund. So anyway, more to come on that.
So you removed the gas?
Not yet. Still in the tank.
We have to find someone that can remove it.
All 800 gallons of it.
But that's like a top priority right now, right?
Well, we're still getting gas at Renner and Chevron, but no, we're trying to find, there's nobody, well, did you get in touch with Renner? Yeah. Trying to find somebody that has enough of the capacity to pump that out. You know, we were.
Is there a risk of the tank failing and
No.
spilling all of that gas? Because
No.
that would be a really big problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's likely coming in from the top.
Okay.
There's no drips.
I won't expand on how that would make that property really not valuable anymore.
It's a road flare, take care of it. We can do.
I don't know if you've ever seen how much phase 2 report costs, but let's clear free of any environmental hazards, please.
Well, if the gas leaks and finds an open flame, yeah, we'll take care of it. We'll protect the diesel tank. But anyway, it is, I think those tanks might be as old as I am, so we'll see. I was asking, yeah, I was asking Nate White about that. We'll come up with, odds are, if we do have a catastrophic failure, we'll probably end up not replacing it, and just continue to fill gas-powered vehicles at the local gas stations. Because the cost of putting in a new fueling dock is gonna be frightfully expensive. Which, if you remember, when we did McKinneyville, we left the tank where it was because it was existing, non-conforming, even though I know that's not a fire code thing.
Containment basin around it.
Yeah, containment basin, concrete pad to fill on, all that good stuff. Anyway, that's all I have. Good news.
One question?
Yeah.
I don't remember, can we say that, is it an average that a third of our calls are overlap? Is that
Yes.
new? So pretty much consistently, we can say that a third of our calls are
Pretty much,
overlap.
yep.
Okay.
Director matters. Any of the directors have comments or topics they would like to discuss at this time, keeping in mind that no action will be taken on topics discussed. However, a director may ask me to agendize a future topic. Anything from any of the directors?
The chief already brought up what I was gonna talk about, LAFCO, and the only thing I'll add is that he did a good job with his presentation.
So I've got a couple of items. One, I wanted to acknowledge and thank Randy for leading the charge on working with the Humboldt Area Foundation and moving forward on a fire truck. And appreciate that.
It was a group effort.
I realize it was a group effort, but I think it's great when we have board members that have knowledge about community attributes like that and can help lead these efforts. And then two items that need to be agendized for next month. One is we need a subcommittee put together that's gonna take the lead on developing the benchmarks for our new chief's first year evaluation. So before, he starts August 2nd, and so in June and July, we need to have a subcommittee that comes together and has a meeting and gives him a list of things for the first year. And then the second item that we need agendized for next month is a presentation from the fire station committee. And we have our first, and I'm not entirely clear, but the first benchmark for decision-making on lease renewal is in early June. And so we need to have a discussion with the board about what our options are at next month's meeting.
Sounds good.
And with that, our meeting is adjourned.